What's up, my channel? It's your friendly neighborhood sassy blonde writer coming at you with another writing video. Today we are answering the age-old question, or at least maybe not answering, but definitely discussing the age-old question of, do your characters need to be likable? Previously in one of my videos, we were talking about likable characters, and I realized I had a lot more to say about it than one video could really cover, or rather, one reasonably timed video could cover. So this is part 2 of, do your characters need to be likable? Before this, we talked about different characteristics that you can use to make your character connect with the audience, and that is, rather than making them likable, make them relatable and give them likable characteristics to an unlikable character. Another example of popular yet unlikable main characters are the anti-hero stories, also known as, like I mentioned before, the sympathetic villain stories. So it used to be pretty commonplace to have the most unlikable character as the villain or the main antagonist in the story, the Dolores Umbridges of the world. But now with stories like Breaking Bad and Gone Girl, it's more commonplace to have an unlikable protagonist where they do bad things. Still, one, sympathize with them, and two, kind of follow their logic. Scary as it may be. Breaking Bad starts off with Mr. White as a down-on-his-luck chemistry teacher who's not making ends meet at all, and that's why he breaks bad. A phrase I did not hear until the show started. The show went on for 5 seasons, and you know he's gonna keep doing bad things, but you keep watching because you hope that he's gonna do better, but then he just gets worse, and like as the show goes on, he becomes less and less likable, and you keep rooting for him to, not necessarily to win at the end of the day, but you keep rooting for him to do better as a person. You keep rooting for him to do the right thing. You hope that he's going to become a better person, but he doesn't. Gone Girl, you have Amy Dunn, who, spoiler alert, frames her husband for her murder when she just pieces out and she, kidnaps herself. Anyway, she sets up her husband for her own murder because she gets mad at him for a lot of things. Mainly having an affair, but a lot of other things. And as she goes through her whole laundry list of reasons why she hates her husband. I haven't seen the movie, but when you first meet her in the book, you're like, oh my god, this woman is crazy. Like, how can she do this? And then she goes through their whole relationship, how he stagnated, he stopped growing as a person, he started taking her for granted. When they both lost their jobs, he made the decision they would move back to his hometown without consulting her, and he used her money to buy a bar with his sister, and that was his job, and he didn't really seem to care what she did or if she wanted to be there, anything about her. And then he has an affair because he's apparently having a rough time. Now again, does what he did to her justify her framing him for murder? No, it does not. However, you read the book, and from what I understand when you watch the movie, you kind of still root for her. The Take does a really good video analyzing and breaking down why you sort of root for Amy Dunn, because she's the perfect example of a female anti-hero who also takes a lot of assumptions and tropes about women and turns them on their head and uses them against society in the book. But again, she's a really unlikable protagonist, but when you're reading the book, you're a lot more interested in what's happening on Amy's side of the story than you are with her husband, because she's a lot more interesting. She's a lot more interesting to read about. As unlikable as what she did is, kind of follow her logic and how she ended up there. And that makes you a little intrigued on where the story's going. And that is another thing, is I think the anti-hero, the fact that you can kind of follow their logic, even though they're unlikable, you can kind of follow their logic and see how they got to this place that made them so unlikable or do these terrible things, is what makes it so compelling to watch and read their stories, and what makes their stories being told so successful. So, another point I would argue on why your main character does not have to be likable for your story to be successful. Another example of a character that isn't written to be likable is the I don't need your love character, and I think this is a very good example of what makes a character compelling. I wouldn't say likable. What makes them compelling is a certain level of vulnerability. So I'm gonna start off by saying this. Confidence is everything, and these characters have it coming out of their ears. Petra Solano from Jane the Virgin. Petra Solano was written as a villain, and she was written to be unlikable. And ironically, this is why people loved her. Paris Geller in Gilmore Girls is another version of this character, the I don't need your love, I'm good at what I do. She is so confident in what she does that you're just kind of in awe of what she does, even though she doesn't care if people like her at all. Paris and Petra do not care. Both of these ladies are very intense. Both of them do not have a lot of friends. And both of them will do anything to get what they want and steamroll over anyone who gets in their way. When you first meet Petra on Jane the Virgin and Paris on Gilmore Girls, you hate them. Or even if you love them as characters, you fully understand that if you met people like this in real life, you would hate them as people. But in a weird way, you kind of respect them for the fact that they don't care if people like them. They just go for what they want, and that's it. They go for what they want, and they fight for it. These characters are usually paired up with someone who is more quiet or soft-spoken or cares about being likable. Another example from manga and anime is Jotaro Kujo from Jojo's Bizzare Adventure, because he doesn't really care if anyone likes him. He's there to do a job, and he will do it well, to the point where he seems like kind of a robot, and there were times where I definitely thought he was a robot in the show. But there are moments where he shows compassion for his friends and family. He cares so deeply for the people who throw their lives on the line for him, and he will go to the ends of the earth to make sure they stay safe. And you think, hey, maybe he's not a robot after all. But as a writer, there's something really freeing about writing these I don't need your love characters. And when you watch or read about a character like that, you feel some sort of level of admiration for them because they don't care. They don't need your love. They either have everything that they want or they are going for whatever they want. They don't care if you stand in their way. And there's something sort of admirable to that, even if the rest of the things they do are not very likable, or you fully understand that if you met them in real life, you would not like them at all. Through these I don't need your love characters, we learn another part of developing a character, vulnerability and humanity, and that's what makes a character really compelling. Not necessarily making them likable, but making them be vulnerable and letting them develop and showing humanity. You can see them almost as a caricature unless you have some vulnerability every now and then. I think the best book example of this would be Emma from Emma by Jane Austen, because apparently everyone except for me and Jane Austen herself hates Emma. And you kind of understand why when you first read the book. She starts off a pretty spoiled brat who meddles in other people's lives, but then she grows as a person. She learns that she doesn't know everything. There's a lot of things about the world that she doesn't understand. There's a lot of assumptions that she made about the world that were proven wrong and kind of knocks her down a peg. And she learns also to stop meddling in other people's lives. Because Emma has that character development, that's why that book has stood the test of time, because nobody wants to read a book about someone who is a spoiled brat who stays a spoiled brat from the beginning to the end of the book. That's why it's better for her to start off as a spoiled brat, and maybe she's not the most likable person in the world, and then have character development where she learns something from the different trials and tribulations and conflicts in the story, so then by the end she's a more well-rounded person, and you see her be vulnerable, and you see her humanity in her interactions and her failures, so then by the end she has grown as a person. Another thing is that having unlikable characters is a good thing because it's realistic. Not everyone is gonna like you, and not everyone is likable 100% of the time, or does the right thing, or is nice all the time, or does the perfect thing in the beginning of the story. Sometimes not doing the perfect thing is the perfect inciting incident, and you have to live with the consequences. I think that's a perfect example of a story. I guess in conclusion, I'd say when you're writing, I think it's a missed opportunity to try to always make your characters likable. Having an unlikable main character either throughout the book or at the beginning, and that's her character arc, is that they learn to become likable, or they have these different elements, like, or you show vulnerability or relatability, or they have an anti-hero arc where you're just kind of rooting for them to do better. These different elements are what make a character compelling. I think it's much more important to have a main character that is compelling with these different aspects rather than a main character who is likable. So that is my conclusion for this video. That's all I got for you today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy these kind of discussion-y type of videos, please like this video so that way I know you want to see me kind of debate with myself, I guess. Is that what we could call this? If you have any thoughts on this topic, if you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments down below. Do you think characters should be likable all the time? Let me know in the comments below. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays. And of course, happy writing!